The alarms hit first shrill, overlapping tones cutting through the glass walls of the control room. Monitors flickered red, system failure, one after another. The logistics grid I had built line by line, rule by rule, was collapsing like a house of cards. Raina, the network's down. Ellison just froze all transactions, someone shouted. The sound of phones ringing bled into the hum of panic. Papers scattered. Managers barked orders. The room stank of fear and burned coffee. Through the chaos, my boss, Evan Doran, was standing at the center, pale and sweating. "Find Mercer," he yelled. "Where the hell is Raina Mercer?" I watched from the parking lot across the street, rain hammering against my windshield. Their silhouettes moved behind the windows running, pleading, lost without a plan. My phone vibrated nonstop beside me on the passenger seat, a steady pulse of desperation. 82 missed calls. The supply chain was broken. The servers down. The clients gone. The same man who said I wasn't ready for leadership was now choking on the silence I'd left behind. I took a slow breath and leaned back in the seat, listening to the city breathe around me. No music, no words, just the rhythmic hiss of rain and the soft hum of a machine I no longer needed to fix. 2 days ago, everything was different. The systems were stable, the reports flawless, the lights steady and green. I'd stood in the conference room across from Evan, holding 5 years of work condensed into one thick folder: performance data, solutions, cost savings. My fingerprints were all over the company's success. He'd glanced at my file, then back at his tablet. "You're competent. Raina," he said, "reliable, but not ready for management." The words landed like a small explosion inside my chest. Now, watching the chaos unfold through the glass, I realized how wrong he had been. The numbers were ready, and they were about to speak louder than I ever could. 2 days earlier, that's where it began. The meeting that turned quiet loyalty into a storm. 2 days earlier, the office still felt calm green lights on the dashboards, steady hum of the servers, the illusion of control. I'd arrived early, the city still damp from last night's rain, a folder tucked under my arm with 5 years of work printed and bound. Every report, every metric, every efficiency gain I'd built from the ground up lived inside that folder. Evan Doran's office overlooked Elliott Bay, all glass and minimalism. He liked his space like he liked his image polished, untouchable. He didn't look up when I entered, only gestured toward the chair in front of his desk. "I reviewed your proposal," he said, scrolling through something on his tablet. "Impressive numbers, as always. You're consistent, reliable." His voice carried that effortless charm that had impressed upper management for years. "But leadership, Raina, it's not just about being good at what you do. It's about presence, influence, visibility." I waited, hands resting on the folder. "I've led every system upgrade, every client transition since 2019, I said quietly. "Our error rates dropped 40% under my supervision. The Ellison contract exists because of my restructuring." He smiled thinly. "Exactly. You execute. Flawlessly. But you're more behind the scenes. You keep the wheels turning. Leaders set direction." The words landed like static in the air. Soft, dismissive, final. For a second, I thought about arguing, about listing the hours, the crises, the nights I stayed while others left. But something in his tone bored. Absolute told me the decision wasn't about merit. It was about narrative. "Thank you for the feedback," I said instead, sliding the folder across his desk. "I'll take it under consideration." He nodded, already glancing back at his screen. "Good. Keep up the solid work." That was it. 5 years, distilled into a pat on the head. Back at my desk, I typed my resignation notice. 2 weeks courtesy, written with the same precision I brought to every project. When I handed it to him that afternoon, he barely skimmed it. "Come on, Raina," he said with a dismissive wave. "Take a long weekend. You'll cool off." He didn't know that was the moment I stopped trying to prove anything. The storm hadn't started yet, but the air was already electric. When I first joined Helion Dynamics 5 years ago, the department was a graveyard of broken systems and forgotten passwords. The previous manager had quit mid-quarter after clashing with upper leadership, taking every piece of procedural knowledge with him. No documentation, no recovery plan, just a cluster of empty folders labeled urgent. I remember my first night staying late, surrounded by screens full of corrupted files. The hum of the servers was the only sound left in the building. I didn't know then that I would rebuild the entire infrastructure piece by piece, databases, client protocols, internal workflows, until every process ran through something I had touched. By the end of the first year, we were meeting every deadline. By the second, we were exceeding projections. Evan stood at the quarterly meeting that year, presenting our division's turnaround to the board. He called it a collaborative recovery. His name was printed under the success metrics I had written. I applauded with the rest of them, hands trembling beneath the table. After that, it became routine. Evan handled visibility. I handled survival. He shook hands with clients. I fixed the systems that made their contracts possible, while he left for rooftop dinners. I watched the clock hit 11:57 p.m., rewriting code and sending reports under the glow of the vending machine light. It wasn't resentment that grew over time. It was a quiet, dry fatigue, the kind that seeps in slowly until even pride feels heavy. The truth was simple. I had built a machine so flawless that no one cared who kept it alive. That night, after Evan waved off my resignation, I drove home through the drizzle and sat in the dark of my kitchen. The clock read 1:12 a.m. My phone blinked with reminders, daily briefings, early prep, client reviews, all the invisible scaffolding I had built around their comfort. I picked up my phone, opened my alarm list, and hovered over the 6:00 a.m. entry that had ruled my mornings for years. One tap, deleted. No sabotage, no anger, just silence. I would stop being the glue no one saw. Let the systems feel what absence really meant. The next morning, I parked exactly at 8:57 and walked through the glass doors at 9 on the dot. No rush, no early start, no quiet hour of preparation before everyone else arrived. For 5 years, I had been the first light in the office and the last to leave. That day, I decided to exist only within the hours I was paid for. At my desk, the familiar hum of servers filled the silence. My inbox blinked with unread messages, overnight summaries, vendor updates, pre-meeting notes. Normally, I'd have answered half of them before sunrise, but not today. I replied only to the ones addressed directly to me. Nothing more. By mid-morning, the rhythm of the office began to shift in small, uneven ways. The finance report didn't land in time for the 10 a.m. call. A vendor ticket went unanswered, bouncing between departments like a loose bolt. The daily operations briefing that Evan relied on never arrived in his inbox. He passed my desk around 11, confusion masked as casualness. "Did you send the metric summary yet?" I looked up from my screen. "Those were part of the pre-briefs. I'm no longer maintaining those unless assigned." He blinked, hesitated, then smiled like I'd made a small joke. "Right. Okay." He walked away, but I could see the first ripple of uncertainty in his shoulders. Across the aisle, Lydia from accounting caught my eye. She was younger, always polite, always watching. Her brow lifted slightly, half curiosity, half respect. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. At 5 o'clock sharp, I powered down my computer. No after-hours emails, no cleanup tasks. I slipped on my coat, the simple act feeling revolutionary, and stepped out into the cool Seattle air. That evening, Caleb stood on a stool beside me, stirring chocolate chips into dough with both hands. The kitchen smelled like butter and sugar, a scent I hadn't noticed in months. "Why are you home early?" he asked, grinning through a dusting of flour. "Because I decided to be," I said, and kissed his hair. When my phone began to buzz on the counter, alerts piling up, I turned it face down. The dough still needed shaping, and for once, the world could wait. It took less than 48 hours for the silence to turn into noise. By Friday morning, the office group chat was a stream of question marks and frantic updates. Someone from IT asked if anyone had seen the new compliance forms. The logistics team reported delayed shipments. Then came the message that froze every channel Anders Freight, our biggest client, was threatening to pull their contract. I was making pancakes for Caleb when the first email came through: urgent need clarification on integration steps. 10 minutes later, another, then 10 more. By noon, my inbox was a flood of panic, all variations of the same desperate question. Where are the process notes? Every one of those files existed. I had built them, labeled them, stored them on the shared drive for years, but no one had ever bothered to look. They had relied on my memory instead, my midnight responses, my quiet rescues. Now the structure was still standing, but the pulse that kept it alive was gone. The phone started ringing around 1. At first, I let it buzz across the counter while I flipped another pancake. Then I turned it over, saw Evan's name flashing across the screen. Decline. It rang again. Another number. Then another. By the time I'd washed the dishes, the counter was vibrating from the constant calls. When I finally answered, the only sound was his voice cracking through the static. "Raina, we need you. The entire integration sequence is down. The client's screaming, please tell me where to start." I didn't say anything. I just listened. Not to the words, but to the tremor beneath them, the sound of panic. Not respect. On the other end, papers shuffled. Voices shouted in the background. "Raina, are you there?" I ended the call gently and set the phone down beside the sink. 82 missed calls by nightfall. My voicemail filled with the same fear on repeat. I leaned against the counter, eyes closed, breathing in the quiet hum of my own kitchen. For years, I had been their safety net, their invisible contingency plan. Now they were finally seeing the shape of the void I'd been holding together. I whispered into the stillness, "Let the numbers speak." By Monday morning, the building felt like a storm shelter after impact. People moved fast but without direction, clutching phones, folders, half-finished coffee cups. The usual background hum of keyboards had been replaced by hurried voices and the sharp echo of panic bouncing down the corridor. I walked in at exactly 9. No earlier, no rush. Just another employee arriving on time. Heads turned as I passed. Lydia caught my eye briefly. There was relief in her face, but also fear, as if she knew calm meant something was about to shift. When I reached the conference room, Evan was already there, sleeves rolled up, tie crooked, dark circles carved under his eyes. Around the table sat the department leads and, at the far end, a man I hadn't seen in person before, Marcus Heller, regional vice president. His reputation preceded him: methodical, detached, allergic to excuses. "Let's get started," Marcus said, his voice even but edged. "Our top client is threatening to terminate. The compliance report is overdue. Half of your systems are down. I need answers." Evan cleared his throat, trying to sound composed. "We've had some unforeseen lapses in documentation. We're handling it." Marcus turned his gaze to me. "Ms. Mercer, you built these systems. Can you fix them?" I could feel every eye in the room shift my way. Evan's hand twitched against the table. He jumped in quickly. "She's been out of sync with the leadership workflow. That's part of why we're in this position." I let him finish, then spoke quietly, my voice steady against the tension. "You said I wasn't ready for leadership, Evan, yet here we are, and the department can't function without my work." I met his eyes, not unkindly, just direct. Tell me, was I unready? Or invisible? The silence that followed was complete. Even the hallway outside seemed to hold its breath. Marcus leaned back, studying me. Then he stood. "Raina, join me in my office." As I followed him out, I could feel the weight of the room behind me, confusion, guilt, dawning realization. The storm that had once been mine now belonged entirely to them. Marcus opened his door and gestured for me to sit. "We need to talk about your future here," he said. Marcus's office overlooked the harbor, the rain tracing silver lines down the glass. The space was quiet, too quiet after the chaos of the morning. He motioned for me to sit, his expression unreadable. "I've been following your work for a while," he began, fingers steepled. "I knew you were capable, but I didn't realize how much this department depends on you until now." He leaned back slightly, watching me with measured calm. "I'm creating a new position, Director of Operations Strategy. It reports directly to me. Double your current salary, full budget control. For a moment." I said nothing. My heartbeat drummed in my ears, but my voice stayed steady. "That's a generous offer." "You've earned it," he replied. "Frankly, I can't afford to lose you." I looked out the window, where the fog over Puget Sound was beginning to lift. For 5 years, I'd built systems that made other people look competent. Now, for the first time, someone was offering to put my name on what I had already been doing. But part of me hesitated. I didn't want to become what I'd fought against. "I'll accept," I said finally, "on 2 conditions. Marcus's brow rose. "Let's hear them." "First, I want full hiring authority for 3 roles. I know exactly the skill sets this place needs if we want to stop patching over weaknesses." He nodded slowly. "Reasonable." "And second," I continued, "Evan stays." That caught him off guard. "After how he treated you? You'd rather keep him, yes. But he completes leadership remediation under my team's oversight. I don't want him replaced. I want him rebuilt." Marcus's mouth curved into something between disbelief and respect. "That's unusually generous. Revenge doesn't fix broken systems," I said. "Structure does." He studied me for a long moment, then extended his hand. "Deal." I shook it, the gesture formal but grounding. Inside, my chest felt tight with something sharp and unfamiliar relief laced with adrenaline. As I left his office, the hallway lights flickered in reflection against the rain-streaked glass. For the first time, I wasn't walking toward another crisis. I was walking toward control. On paper, I was calm. Inside, I was trembling. 3 months later, the office didn't look the same. The tension that once hung in the air had lifted, replaced by quiet focus, the kind born from clarity, not fear. My new team worked out of a smaller corner suite overlooking the bay, glass walls etched with handwritten notes and flowcharts that actually meant something now. Lydia sat across from me, glasses low on her nose, dissecting an audit spreadsheet with surgical precision. Beside her, Noah, a junior coder I'd fought to pull from IT support, was sketching new automation sequences on a tablet. He'd been overlooked for years because he was quiet, methodical traits I understood too well. Now, he was the backbone of our redesign. We had rebuilt Helian's workflow from the inside out. Every redundant process mapped, every loophole sealed, every handoff tracked. Over time, hours dropped by 35% within 6 weeks. Audit accuracy improved beyond projections. The numbers didn't just recover, they sang. Our clients noticed. Anders Freight renewed their contract and expanded it. 2 more clients returned, citing unprecedented transparency. For the first time in years, I left the office before sunset without guilt. The day Marcus presented our quarterly results to the board, I stood near the back of the room, unseen but present. The screen glowed with Graph's clean lines, upward curves. "Her division alone," Marcus said, tapping the slide, reversed a $4.2 million operational loss and turned it into net growth. The room murmured. The CFO leaned forward. Someone clapped, softly at first. Then others joined. Across the table, Evan sat stiff, his jaw tight. He didn't look at me, but he didn't have to. His silence carried more weight than any apology could. The pride that once built a wall between us had nowhere left to hide. When the meeting ended, Marcus caught my eye as he closed his laptop. Just a small nod. Approval without spectacle. As people filed out, I lingered for a moment, watching the screen fade to black. The satisfaction that settled in my chest wasn't the sharp rush I'd imagined. It was quieter, steadier, not victory, not revenge, just proof. The numbers had spoken, and they hadn't lied. The rain had returned, soft against the kitchen windows, a steady rhythm that filled the quiet of the house. Caleb sat at the table, pencil tapping lightly as he worked through a math problem, his hair falling into his eyes. The smell of tomato soup lingered from dinner, warm and simple. It was the first evening in months that felt still. No after-hours meetings, no last-minute emergencies. My laptop sat closed beside a mug of cooling tea, its screen dark for once. "Mom," Caleb said without looking up, "did they finally see how good you are?" I paused, smiling at his choice of words. "They saw the work," I said. "That's enough." He nodded, satisfied, and bent back over his notebook. I watched him for a moment, the quiet focus, the persistence. Maybe he had learned that from me. Or maybe I had simply learned it through him that worth doesn't need noise to be real. My phone buzzed on the counter, a single vibration in the hush of the kitchen, a message from Marcus, board-approved VP promotion. Unanimous. Congratulations. Raina. I read it twice, then set the phone down gently. There was no rush to respond, no wave of disbelief, just a calm settling through me, the kind that comes when something has finally aligned the way it was always meant to. Outside, the streetlights shimmered on the wet pavement. I could see my reflection faintly in the window, older than when I started at Helion, but steadier, more grounded. The city pulsed beyond the glass, lights blinking in the distance like heartbeat monitors. Alive again. For years, I had tried to explain my value in words, in reports, in meetings where voices like mine were easy to overlook. But it wasn't my voice that changed anything. It was the evidence I left behind, the structure that kept running when the noise stopped. Caleb yawned, gathering his papers. I stood to turn off the lights, the rain's rhythm softening against the roof. Sometimes the loudest statement isn't a confrontation. It's the quiet proof left in the data, unarguable, undeniable, and finally seen. The house fell silent, except for the sound of rain, steady and true.